This is a vision that I got February 9th, 2021. I got it early in the morning and it kind of finished up around the end of the meeting today. The first thing I saw was some sort of metal coil, and both ends of it lit up so that I would see sort of that they were significant. I saw Tim putting this coil into the back of a Jeep. I would almost say like plugging it in and then sort of closing up the compartment that was in the Jeep. And this Jeep was located on their property in Joyce, and it was on the hill next to their garage, or where they keep their cars. The Jeep was in between the bottom and the top of the hill, just sort of there. And I noticed that I believe it was stuck there. And the next thing, Tim got into the Jeep, and he sort of put his arm on the passenger seat and turned around like he was going to try to back up, but it wouldn't move. And that's actually when I noticed it was stuck. And so he actually took the steering wheel off. He completely took the steering wheel off and set it aside. And inside the steering wheel was all these wires. And there was a lot of them, and they were all kind of all over the place. And none of them were connected to anything. In fact, the tops were sort of frayed. And there was a blue one, a yellow one, and a red one that I saw originally. And then the next thing I noticed was there was coming from the top was a bigger wire, and that wire was also frayed. It was a bigger wire, and it had white, the casing, or the whatever holds all the wires together, that was white. And then it was the copper color that was sort of out like a broom, sort of like, all the wire pieces were kind of frayed out. And he began to connect all of the 3 different colors, the red, yellow, and blue, to the white wire. But he connected the red, almost looked like he connected them just sort of one copper piece of wiring to the other copper piece of wiring, and same with the yellow. And then the next thing that happened was the blue was also, I believe, connected by a little bit of an amount of wire. And then right after that, he snipped the yellow from the white, and he snipped the red from the white, but the blue remained connected. And then the blue wires all began to sort of connect with the white ones. So they were kind of wrapping around each other until they were all tightly wound in one piece. And then after they were tightly wound together, it sort of created this, again, with the DNA strand. And then after it became this DNA strand, the white part came up over the blue and totally consumed the blue wire. And once this happened, Tim put the steering wheel back on and was able to start the car. And the car was able to go. But instead of going back, he drove the car forward up the mountain. And then he drove it up on top of the mountain to where it was sort of put in a place where you can sort of overlook the ocean and down below. And after he parked the car, or the Jeep here, he got out of the driver's seat and sat into the passenger seat. And he had a book in his hand, in his lap. And the book was open in his lap. The book had writing inside of it. And he took one of the pieces of paper out of the book, and he sort of flattened it out so that it was really, really flat. And then he began to this was like you would with a cell phone. This part might be confusing, but how you can kind of put your fingers on and zoom in on something. He kind of took the scripture. I don't know if it was scripture. He took the writing up. He took a passage of the writing up and sort of threw it up into the sky a little bit in front of him, like it was a screen. And then he zoomed in on a sentence, and then he zoomed in even more on a word. And then once he had that word, he pulled out that word and separated it, and then began to write underneath it, like really fast, like a lot of writing. After this took place, he rolled up this piece of paper or whatever it was, because it was in the air, so I guess it turned into a piece of paper, and he put it in one of those things. I'm not sure if anybody's familiar. Back in the old days, they used to have at banks this little container that you put your bank card or money in or something, and you put it in this little machine, and it takes it up into the air and takes it into the bank. He put it in one of these little devices, so it's like a canister. He put this scrolly type thing into the canister, and then put the canister inside of this tube that took it up all the way into heaven. Once this was up there, you can see up in the sky that the sky was full of clouds, and it wasn't a too darkness of a clouds, but it was a little stormy up there, and you could see lightning on the other side of the clouds, not visible, but that it was just like power. You could see the power up there. And then immediately following, some light came down from this certain part right out in front of him. Came out this circular light from the clouds, just sort of almost like if you took a saw and sawed a circle out of the clouds, it would come down. And this circle came down, and it came down with a throne. The throne of God came down and came down to earth. And the throne sat there on the ground and then the Lord had like a scepter in his hand. And the next thing that happened was he began to point. Now this is located underneath, like, let's say if you're looking from the road, and to the right is like the cabin's bathrooms, and to the left is like that whole grassy area where you can park RVs at. This was in between those two places. Like there's that hill, and it comes down. Anyway, the Lord had that scepter, and he began to point it, almost like tapping it on the ground. And everywhere he tapped it on the ground, how do I explain this part? I almost want to say they were like a bag of seeds, but I don't know for sure because, well, I'll just say they were a bag of seeds. But on the cover of this bag was a measuring cup of olive oil and a small seedling wrapped in like a not wicker, like a burlap. And then after that, there was about maybe 6 or 7 of these. He hit the ground or hit the spot, and they all popped up. And the next thing that happened was the oil. There was like a shovel and like a pitchfork there, and they had dug out this really nice soil to put these little seedlings, or these little plants, I think they're called seedlings, inside the ground. And then the olive oil was poured over the seedlings in the soil, and the oil began to sort of overflow and come down the mountain. Well, this pin with a feather on it sort of dug out this trench from the throne of God to sort of the bottom where all the oil was kind of pooling, and it wasn't continuing on, it was just sort of pooling there at the bottom once it came out from these little holes that were dug for these saplings. And it pooled down there. But then this place that was dug began to flow with olive oil from the throne of God, and it met up at the bottom where the other oil was pulling together, and then it began to go even further down the mountain, and it sort of had all these little streams that were coming from it, even more than before. And at the bottom of that hill, I believe that all of you guys were standing there with these vessels, and they were first made of clay, and they were filling up. They were small at first, and then they became very large. and they were filling up. So they were like probably waist high or bigger. And as they filled up and they were filling up, the vessel changed, was made into like a precious metal after that, maybe like a white gold or something like that. It changed the vessel from the vessel of clay into a more precious vessel. And that was the end.